Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the final episode for March, where we are learning to write our narrative in a new way, letting go of the things that are no longer serving our purpose, appreciating who we are becoming, learning to find our story, learning to write new chapters. Thank you for being with me this entire month. And we close off this month with our final episode in this series, and we call it Clearing Space for the New Story. Because if you recall, this month we have gone back and done a lot of reflection on what is the story we are living. Is it truly our own? Is it a story that we have inherited? And then recognizing the fact that, wow, we have outgrown that old story. We have moved on. And then learning to rewrite the rules that shrink us and learning to unlearn a few things and continuing to grow and continuing to write our story, then choosing the story we want to live. That is where we closed off last time, and asking ourselves, what is the story that we want to live now? Finally, when we are at a point where we know we have our own story, we are going to find out what it is to clear the space for these new chapters. I will continue more on this in April, and that month we will call it, in line with the season. We will call it emotional spring cleaning. But for now, continuing with our narrative theme, I want to tell you something that happened a few days ago. My daughter is a huge Beatles fan, and not just Beatles. She's a fan of the classic rock genre of music. But Beatles is her first love, and Paul McCartney in particular. So she had this folder that was given to her by a dear friend, who was a friend once upon a time, but then caused her a lot of heartbreak. She's 14 years old, and all of this heartbreak happened almost 2 years ago. So this is a difficult age. It's an interesting age as children grow up, find their own, understand, you relearn, unlearn. But I did not realize how much this had impacted till she came and told me, Mom, I'm finally ready to let go of this folder. I have written a letter in this folder, so when you donate it, I want whoever receives this to understand the significance this folder had in my life, and maybe it'll help them in some ways. I was very intrigued and I read the letter. It was all about letting go. And like I said, I will talk about this more next month. But she was ready to let go so she could find new ways to write her story that she's living now, with kinder friends, gentler experiences, her own way of learning, her own way of growing, finding her voice, and learning to be who she is without having to fit in. So I thought that was a beautiful example from my 14-year-old of how she has chosen to clear the space. So as we close out March, I want to leave you with one simple truth, friends. You cannot step into a new story while carrying the emotional clutter of the old one. And I have that particular folder in my car right now, and she was very clear that she wanted to go with me to that place where we donate stuff, and she wanted to hand it out there. I'm assuming that is some sort of a closure that she wants to experience. And so, just like spring cleaning in your home, which is what I was doing, I understood from her beautiful action that our inner world also needs some clearing out. Emotional clutter can look like old resentments, maybe certain regrets, certain identities we had to take on which we did not really enjoy. The kind of guilt sometimes we have outgrown because it was not our fault, or it was a situation or a circumstance that no longer serves us. Sometimes it's in the form of roles that you no longer want to play anymore. If you remember, I started this month with a question. Are you playing the role of the obedient daughter, or the dutiful son, or the always ready to please sister, mother, whoever, whatever role? Emotional clutter can also look like stories that once protected you, from being who you are, but now they limit you. They could look like expectations that exhaust you. In my daughter's case, I know there were huge expectations from this friend on how she could or couldn't behave in her little social group. And they were exhausting to her. They were tiresome. And she took her time to outgrow those. And obviously, clutter also looks like versions of yourself that you have outgrown, that you no longer wish to shrink into. As you think back on this month, friends, I would strongly urge that just reflect on these as a witness. Do not judge. Do not judge yourself. You just want to release the things that no longer belong to you. They no longer really add to who you are. Instead, in some ways, they probably drain who you want to be. The question, of course, remains is what am I still carrying that I no longer need? Maybe it's a limiting belief, maybe it's a fear, maybe it's a memory, maybe it's a version of you that you have outgrown. So today, friends, all I ask is honor who you are and tell yourself you are making room for who you're becoming. And choose one thing, just one thing to release, a thought, a story, a habit, a weight, a nagging memory. Let it go with gratitude. Let it go gently. Let it go because you're ready for a story that fits the person you are, and this little bit that you're letting go will help you fly, will help you grow, right? This is the season of renewal. This is your emotional spring. This is your new beginning. Thank you, friends. I will see you in April.